we've been trying to, at least in the first episode, we've been trying to open these by mangling a couple Deadwood quotes to get these podcasts started. But let's leave it alone this time, Clay, because I'm stupidest when I try to be funny. I did it anyway. I got it. I got it in there.
I really liked when he told, he said, keep lying and I'll kill you right in that chair. It's very good line delivery. And I also liked, what was the one where he says, when Saul says he ain't angry, and then he says he's got a mean way of being
nice.
way of being happy.
Yeah, mean way of being happy. Yeah.
That's pretty good. We should just turn this into, you know how like if you cover like a comedy show, it just turns into people just saying the bits that they like and chuckling about it. It should be an hour of just favorite quotes.
It's tough. I'm concerned because I think the first podcast went fine. I think that we're going to settle into a groove. I can already think that this episode there's going to be less of like the plot mechanics of what went on, because I think the show is actually settling into itself. But you do run into the danger of just like, I just have a screen full of quotes here from the episode, and you want to avoid just being like, I'm going to wait till Clay says something that relates to a wheelbarrow, and then I'm going to say the wheelbarrow quote right after that. It's tough to avoid. Anyway.
We can just talk for an hour about Nick Offerman's dick if you want to.
Well, we're going to get right into this podcast for Deepwater right after Clay puts his iron away.
You're listening to a podcast that is a lie agreed upon. Join Wes and Clay as they discuss HBO's Deadwood and tell you something pretty.
All right, everybody. So this is Deepwater, the second episode of Deadwood. It was directed by Davis Guggenheim, written by Malcolm McRury. In this episode, Doc Cochran does his best to hide the little girl who survived the Metz family massacre from Swearengen. Otter convinces Hickok to take appearance money to gamble in one of the local joints. Garrett tries to work his claim with the assistance of Dan Doherty. Johnny Burns tells Swearengen that he's learned that Ned Mason was behind the Metz attack and was likely working with his brother Tom and Persimmon Phil. Here's my counteroffer to your counteroffer, Swearengen tells Bullock and Starr. Go fuck yourself. Doc entrusts Jane with the task of protecting the little girl. Swearengen enlists Tom Mason to kill Hickok, and Mason gets gunned down. Doherty goes to kill the Metzko, but Doc Cochran stands him down. Otter and Jane grab the child and head for the hills. Swearengen murders Persimmon Phil to ensure his silence. So there we are. So, did you notice any visual difference in this one? The show's kind of settled into what it eventually looks like almost immediately, and I think it looks very distinct from the pilot. But what do you think?
Yeah, it does. It's the lighting is a lot more. It's still moody, but it's a lot more even.
Yes.
It doesn't have
no
that
flickering lights on people's faces all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't have that like really kind of like flagged off heavy shadow kind of look to it, which I think would be. I think it's a good move because it looked fine in the first episode, but I think that look might get a little tiring after a while.
It's just a little. I think this episode looks better than the pilot does. Actually,
I agree. I do too. Yeah,
it's I think it also kind of fits the show, too, because I think I can sort of see moving into the second episode where Milch and Walter Hill might have had disagreements about how the show should look, in that I think that Walter Hill was approaching it more like this is a standard Western that we're going to do, and I'm going to put sort of standard Western-y look to it. And the thing that I noticed about this one, and I don't know if it's just this episode, but much like the pilot, the show continues to not do a lot of big long shots of nature in any way. Like I think there's two shots of people being outside in this one, and both of them, like there's the one where they're burying Ned Mason, where they're digging the grave for him. That's kind of a wide shot. And then I think Brom digging in his riverbed is the other wide shot that shows environment. Yep. Outside of that, the show is almost claustrophobic when it's inside the buildings and stuff like that, and it's inside the town. And I thought that the way that this one was shot and the way that it looked is much better to see the structures of the town and like the architecture of things and how like grimy and still being built it is. There's a lot of shots of people like Al coming down the stairs of the Gem Saloon, and it's kind of looking up at the like the rafters of the Gem, the roof of it. And I just think it fits the material better the way that they're shooting here, which is that they're not kind of in this like stock Western thing where there's characters in the shadows and it's all torchlight and stuff like that. It's more developed than that, and you really need to see the infrastructure coming up around them, and I think it does it better in the second one.
Yeah, I didn't really get a great sense of the layout of the town in the first episode.
Yep.
And I think they do a much better job with that here. They keep things a little bit wider on the streets so you can see more movement and stuff. And like, honestly, one of the most helpful things in the entire episode as far as telling me where everything is when Calamity Jane points out where the doctor's office is in relation to the gem.
It's just down the road.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I know how this is shaped now. But yeah, that one long shot when they're burying the guy, they show a long shot of the town, and I was wondering if that was a real long shot or if it was like CGI or something, because I don't know why it would be CGI, but you never know depending on what the surrounding is supposed to look like.
I think it's actually the town. I think that's what the ranch looks like.
Okay.
It's in kind of a little valley like that. Yeah.
All right. I was just, the only reason I thought it might have been CGI was because I think, I don't know if like the light was hitting it weird or something, but it made me think, oh, I wonder if they digitally put that in there because I need it to be in a certain
no, I don't think this.
But.
Yeah, I don't think the show ever went to trouble of location shooting and stuff. I think it's all, and I think that ties into why there's so few establishing shots of things, because they're not literally there to do it, so they can't do it.
Yeah,
There's a little. I have a little map of the town in one of the books that I have, which is basically it's just the main street, and it has sort of a side street, and then there's a Chinese alley off the side street, and that's pretty much it. So it's really just 3 roads, if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah. Having a better sense of the size of the place too and how small it actually is, I think goes a long way to kind of showing you how incestuous everything is.
Yeah.
Because I mean the thing with these kinds of stories is, depending on the town, there's inevitably going to be some suspension of disbelief as to how all these people keep crossing paths with each other. But if the entire town is like 6 buildings, then everybody is just going to be,
they all eat breakfast at the same diner. They all go to the same place.
They all go to the hotel. Yeah.
That's true. It's and really there's only a couple characters that you don't see who you do see that don't live in the town. It's basically Ellsworth. He's like the only regular character that does not seem to live in the town, and he lives by his claim and things like that. So, yeah, this is Deepwater, the second episode. So, the title itself comes from a reference to Hickok when he's gambling and he's losing all of his money, and the bartender, Tom Nuttall, is giving him credit, says that, hate to see you get in any deeper water or something like that. I hate to see the water get more deep than it is or something like that.
What'd be your opinion as far as me getting another 50?
You want another 50 in credit?
If that's all right with you.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Play poker.
I'm no good at it.
You let that slow you down? Fella in the far corner to your right intends me harm. When he makes his move, would you keep an eye on the man with him?
You bet.
See the fellas I mean?
Yes, I do.
Thanks, Montana.
Wouldn't want the water getting no deeper than this, Mr. Hickok.
Fair enough.
Pretty much sums up the episode, I think. It's an episode that's built around the theme of trouble is filling the camp, and everyone is doing things that are kind of escalating situations that they're involved in. And I think that the way that the episode sort of twists them together is that it takes a larger view of, it sort of takes this weird like cosmic look at stuff, and it says that a lot of intentions that people do don't come out the way that you expect them to. And we can get into all the narratives there, but I think like Doc Cochran has the semi-famous line about, I see as much misery out of them moving to justify themselves as those that set out to do harm. And I think that's pretty much the theme of the episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought that scene with him and Jane was really, really great. It turns the Doctor into a very unique kind of character. He's really great. Like character-wise, I think focusing in on him and Jane was a great move, because those are 2 characters who very easily could become stock sort of background cliche kind of characters. and it seems like they go out of their way to show how complicated and interesting they actually are here. And it makes having the doc be this guy who's sort of like has nowhere else to go and is beholden to his masters, but still has this, and is, some sort of addict, but is still conscious of right and wrong and the dangers of both of them, is very interesting.
A doctor who he's sort of similar to Bullock in the way that Bullock represents police in like a law and order aspect to things, like down to his personality. They twist Bullock a little bit to make him essentially be a bad cop in terms of what he is as a personality. But Cochran is a character who's a doctor who is sort of fundamentally driven by the, do no harm thing, that the Hippocratic Oath that doctors are supposed to be sworn to. But he's in a situation where he finds that very difficult to do all the time. So his actions are to try to sort of maximize the Hippocratic Oath in a world where it's not really very easy for him to do without him coming under some kind of harm as well. And he has scenes in this one where he freaks out about it because he gets so stressed by the fact that he can't do things that he wants to do. When he snaps at Al after he's tending to the whores in the gym and stuff like that, and says, "I know what I am and I know what I can't be." And so it comes down to that. He's frustrated in the same way that Jane is frustrated, and I think that's why they connect as characters in their scenes.
Give these girls a good going over, Doc. Look to them like they're your own.
Don't tell me my job or how long to do it in. I can see to them, and I can see to the way I'm goddamn able, and that is all I can goddamn do.
Ooh, what's your time of the month, huh?
I really like that scene too, because he makes this big display of talking back to Al, and then Al just completely brushes him. This is a really good episode for Al as far as showing his his intimidation factor and how confident he is of everything, at least outwardly, with, because the doctor gives him this big emotional kind of like clap back, and Al's just kind of like, whoa.
He goes, he gives him it's that time of month.
What time of month is it for you, buddy? And then just like leaves and just completely writes him off. And the whole zigzag, back, what's the word I'm looking for?
The ping-ponging is they're back and forth.
The ping-ponging and the twisting that he does when he's talking to Bullock is really good.
Al has great scene. I love the Bullock scene. I really love the scene where Al gets Persimmon Phil to hang himself with more rope as he explains that he knows everything that happened. As Persimmon Phil's the one of the two that comes back when the guy is fucking in the other room. He's trying to explain to Al what's been going on, but Al knows the truth of everything. And he sort of lets out bit by bit and gets the guy more nervous as the conversation is going along.
He kind of pulls the same thing with this guy. I think it is a testament to him understanding how intimidating he actually is, because he pulls the same shit with this guy that he did with Driscoll in the last episode, where he basically kind of just like looked at him in an angry way and didn't really say much, and the guy just hung himself essentially.
Listen to Tom carrying on in there.
Bad luck he wasn't here yesterday.
Yeah, what'd we miss?
Squarehead family I could have tipped you to heading back to Minnesota.
Well off? Worth still trying to catch, are they?
Sue already caught up with them, did from last night on the road to Spearfish.
Heathen cocksuckers. So we missed a good score there, did we?
Keep lying. I'll murder you in that chair.
I'm gonna tell you what happened, Al, and this is the God's honest truth. We come on that family by accident. Nobody's trying to hold out your end or anything of the sort or conceal a goddamn thing. That's your end right there, weighed to the ounce. My problem was we didn't clear this with you, and you know how you get, Al. I mean, you know that yourself. My problem was bringing up the subject. But that's all weighed out there.
You know why I get how I get?
Yeah, You want to see over the job. You don't like loose ends. I appreciate that.
Don't like messes. Things done half-assed, bags of shit left to hold.
There's no loose ends here, Al. I'll guarantee you that much, right?
Because I got a whole operation here to consider.
Listen to Tom.
One of the squareheads lived. No?
I'm saying that's pretty hard to believe. I believe you, but we seen to him pretty good.
They brought it back to camp. It's over at the Sawbones.
Is it talking? I mean, can it speak English? Because when we was seeing to him, they was all screaming in Squarehead, Al.
Where's Ned Mason?
That's a fucking story right there, Al. If you knew the fucking problem. Well, when comes to Squarehead's time, he spooks and rides off. Tom's in my hands as full as they was doing what we had to do, so God knows where he got off to. But your cut there, that reflects he's out. There's no cut
He
there.
came here. Say no again, I'll murder you where you fucking
He
sit.
swore he'd head to Cheyenne.
Yeah, but here's closer, isn't it? All you cocksuckers go for the easiest chance.
So, where is he now?
Where he is now is he stirs the whole camp up last night with his massacre story till I'm giving liquor away and cunt at half price just to keep my crowd controlled. Party makes up from Nuttall's to ride back out to Spearfish. Wild Bill Hickok and those two guys walk past you downstairs to save the squarehead kid. Tell Ned to stick around till they see what the kid has to say about him.
Wild Bill Hickok?
And Ned throws down.
Against Wild Bill Hickok.
Against Hickok and this other cocksucker who draws almost as fast, so it's a toss-up. Who blew Ned's head off?
Christ, Al. I'm really sorry for the bother.
You know, that's I really like the way they kind of show him touching on different parts of what's going on and getting information by using little inferences that he's gotten and implications that he's got that he knows. Well, he has an idea. He thinks he knows what's going on. He's playing dumb in certain places to get more information out of people, like when he's talking to Saul and Bullock about Wild Bill being part of being a silent partner and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and how quickly Saul jumps to say that they don't know the guy and stuff. Like it's a really fun chess game from him. I don't even know if I'd call it chess. I feel like he's playing checkers or something because these people are all idiots.
Yeah, he's super, like, I mean, he's dealing with master negotiator Seth Bullock, right? Who's just like,
right,
what the
like
fuck did you say to me?
It's interesting because they position these two guys as antagonists, obviously, because you know they're essentially the two leads of the show.
Well, and
But,
it's a traditional. It's not unreasonable to call this a crime drama TV show either. So
sure.
You think that
Yeah.
Bullock's the cop and Swearengen is the crime boss, so they're going to square off against each other.
Yeah. But what's interesting is, like, I feel like coming out of this episode, if I was Al, I would be like, oh, I've got this guy's number, no problem. Like, he very quickly gets him to blow his top, and just by kind of like talking circles around him, and he's clearly quick to violence. You know, I feel like
he gives him the hands up, don't shoot. I got a whiskey in my hand, just turning around.
Mr. Swearengen.
Yeah, that's right.
Saul Starr. Seth Bullock. Rent on lot 4.
Lot 4. The hardware boys, huh? Yeah, want to buy you fellas a drink. How's business on that lot? Hell of a spot, isn't it? Any more foot traffic, you'd have to call it a riot. Now, I'm turning back slow. Nothing in hand but this whiskey bottle. Well, I heard you're not a man. I want mistaken my intentions.
Who says that? I'd like to ask him what they mean.
That fella drew on Seth this morning.
Never heard different.
No one mistook his intentions.
Let's leave it all alone. I am stupidest when I try to be funny.
It's intentional on Al's part, right? Like Al.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's well written enough. Like Al is doing all this because I think that it's a well enough written show that I find Al's justification, which he later explains to Saul, is that, like, I don't know you from a hole in the wall. Like, how the fuck am I supposed to
Right.
get to know you unless we enter this arrangement for a little bit? Because
it's actually fairly. It's not a reasonable. It's not an unreasonable ask, honestly.
no, I think that he's like Bullock comes out the worst for the wear in this, because Bullock starts off being unable to take what's clearly a joke about him, and then it builds into this. He can no longer deal with this person, and that's the thing about Bullock, is that Bullock represents this sort of law and order influence, but Bullock himself is this like deeply unsettled rage monster within him, and he only he's sort of desperate for order because he realizes how out of control he is on the inside.
And not even on the inside. I think part of the way that he's been acting is that he is so just out of his depth in general here.
Yeah.
Because, like we talked about in the last episode, he's never been a salesman before, so he's put in a weird place there. The only time in the episode where he really feels confident is when he's fucking shooting a guy in the face.
Yeah.
So
well, that's the order aspect. He's entering a world where he does not know the rules that he's supposed to engage in, and he's uncomfortable by it.
Yeah. And they do it it's just played out so well, because I don't think Saul or anybody else would ever deign to say that to his face, but they play it out pretty well, where it's a nice inversion of the traditional Western character who strolls into town being completely in control of the situation,
competent. Yeah.
And now you've got in this version you've got your martial gunslinger character who doesn't know what the fuck's going on and getting really frustrated by it.
It's so interesting. It's we talked about it earlier. Milch had this sort of Milch's main complaint about Westerns is that he thinks that the laconic cowboy of few words is a byproduct of the Hays Code and the limitations that were put on characters. So
sure.
So his argument is that basically the strong silent type became the model of things in a way that the games of language doesn't really allow. So it's hard to describe, but it's basically the strong silent type is always going to be correct, when in reality there's more of these language games that seem to be more natural to people, and that when people are doing deals and stuff and this kind of thing, it's not you don't win by just being the Clint Eastwood strong silent type who goes in and is just morally correct in these situations.
Yeah.
And so the language game is really interesting, because Swearengen is much better at the language game than Bullock is. And Bullock's strong silent type, repressed, emotionally constipated character has a hard time dealing with it. And he usually comes out worse for wear, although he's interesting because he will recognize once he steps away and cools down what he needs to do, but he can't do it in the moment,
Right, yeah. Yeah, the way he comes around on the deal later in the episode.
Yeah.
Clearly he's had some time to reconsider, and there's, thought about it a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting because would you say that he's the only character who doesn't really have a grasp on who he is or what his place is? Because I'm on the fence about it, because I feel like a lot of them do, but then I feel like he and probably Calamity Jane don't.
Hickok doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that they are. I think one of the strengths of the show is that the characters are kind of. They're written as sort of archetypes in one way, but I think that they're actually all deeper than that too at the same time. It's hard to, there's not a lot of shows that I feel that really characterize people as multifaceted in the way that this show does. And I think that Bullock definitely sticks out as someone who is unsure of where he needs to be and what's going on. But I think that as much as Al is in control of the situation, Al is also unsure of what he needs to do and where he needs to be. And he's just better. The main difference between the way that the two of them react is that Al is much better in thinking on the moment about what needs to happen than Bullock is. Bullock is laser focused on the thing that he wants. And if anyone disagrees with the thing that he wants, he gets upset with them. And Swearengen is much more fluid in how he talks to the people. He lets them give him information, and then he makes a decision on it. Ultimately, at the end of this episode, he has to not go through with the plan that he was planning to do and adapt to a new situation to come out the way that he wants to. So I think that they're both kind of everyone in the town is a little bit out of water in the sense that they don't know where they really fit, but some of them are just built better as personalities to adapt to situations better than other ones are.
Yeah, I think Al's biggest problem is he's surrounded by idiots.
Yes. Yeah. And he says it in this. It's a bunch of people giving him bags of shit that he has sold.
Yeah, like I do think it is fairly truer to life, where all of these plans that he has end up going. Like, the thing that I find so fascinating about it is his plans end up going screwy because the person that he's working with isn't smart enough to follow his directions, and they are dumb enough to think that they can do something, like make it better.
Yes.
Like do something better, like put another extra my words aren't coming for me at this moment, but you know what I mean, where it's like in the last one where the guy takes him to 20,000 instead of stopping at 16. It's like he thinks he's doing a good thing, but he's actually fucking the whole plan up.
Right.
But he thinks he's being clever. Like, he's surrounded by a lot of those guys. And so that gets difficult to work with when you've got everybody thinks they're the Pink Panther trying to do something on the sly, and they end up just looking like idiots.
That's Persimmon Phil, the guy that he sort of gets all the information from.
Man, that guy deserved to fucking die, because that whole last scene, knowing that Al spent all that time to go into a safe to get a knife.
Yeah. He better die.
That guy, if I was him and I saw Al going to that safe and like opening it up and taking all this time, and I'm like, okay, so like, we're good, right? Okay, I'm just gonna go, and then I would immediately fucking leave.
Yeah,
and never return to Deadwood.
You're sure that girl doesn't know what you look like?
Al, I'm confident that girl don't know what I look like. But no, I can't guarantee you that to a moral certainty. And I know you got your whole operation here you got to consider, and you don't need to be worried or troubled about, well, as far as that girl recognizing me, no matter if it's the slimmest of the slim of possibilities. So what do you want me to do? You want me to just stay out of camp until you deal with all this? Why don't I do that, Al? How about you have Johnny check under the rock, and I'll put messages under the rock, and then I'm gonna check under the rock every day and see if you want to send messages to me.
Err on the side of caution.
Is that a plan? All right. Hey, Al, I think I got time to put my brand on a little snatch before I go.
No loose ends now.
But he's drawn in because he wants to screw one of the whores on his way out.
Yeah, his last line is, mind if I put my brand on a little pussy?
Yeah.
Then he's stabbed.
Dumbasses.
Yeah, he's.
I do feel bad for Nick Offerman's character, though. I think that guy got
he got
dirty.
the shit end of the stick. That's the other. Yeah, and I think that's one of the themes about it that I think is interesting about this one, besides the fact that trouble is brewing for everyone and seeing how it works. Oh, and before we get to that, I had one small point that I think, not to endlessly compare things to Star Trek. It's just that I'm sure a lot of people listening to this listen to the Star Trek podcast, and I have watched too much Star Trek. But one of the things that Deadwood does, like really strongly, I think, and is the sign of great writing, is that there are stories in this episode that are purely plot, move the chess piece to somewhere else to get it somewhere for the next episode. I think most clearly it's the Brahm and Alma Garrett with the gold mine thing. The episode does not waste its time doing too much of their scenes with them. It recognizes that it's just these characters need to move to the next episode, so they're going to have a scene where Brahm recognizes that he's getting screwed out of something. We're going to move on to it. It doesn't really tie thematically into the rest of the episode.
Right.
But the episode doesn't spend half its runtime focusing on that. It just does it enough to say, this is what's happened. Now let's get back to the point of the actual episode.
I did actually really appreciate how instead of drawing out what's her name, Alma,
yeah,
instead of drawing out Alma's addiction to laudanum or whatever, the doctor's like, how about we just I just give you this shit and you let me focus on people who actually need me. Just stop fucking around here. I was like, awesome, great. So we don't have to deal with 8 episodes of her
hiding her addiction,
having the vapors and stuff. Yeah.
I've replenished your supply of medicine.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm very grateful for your attention. I only wish my symptoms would subside.
If I were to tell you that I would see to your requirements, whether you had symptoms or not, do you suppose that would help you to heal?
I don't know what you mean.
I believe you do, madam. I believe we understand each other. There are people in this camp in genuine need of my attention. Make this adequate to your purposes for the next several days.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, it's how every medical marijuana doctor felt, I'm sure, in the early 2000s or something.
I also was legitimately impressed that Garrett came to his senses so quickly.
Yeah, for the gold mine. Yeah.
Immediately being like, I think I got bamboozled here. Maybe I can find my way out of this.
Yeah, he seems to... I sort of wonder if he's using the bamboozling as a justification, because it always comes across to me that he realizes he doesn't like doing it before he then motivates himself to, I probably got scammed. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the other thing is, he did it for like
a day. Because this is the one day after. Interesting. Most of the Deadwood episodes are one day. They cover one 24-hour cycle. And this one comes right after the pilot because Al gets out of bed in the same way that he went to bed in the pilot.
He treated panning for gold very much like a rich child, where they said they wanted something very badly that was very expensive. They got it for them, and then they used it once, and then decided they didn't want to do it anymore. Go in and just take that gold mine and put it into the closet with the guitar and the karate gi.
That's why Ellsworth has such a great outlook on it when he meets Brom digging for gold, and he comes over and he's like, how's your day going? And Ellsworth says, I've met my quota for whiskey, pussy, and food. He's like, any further winnings will go straight to the faro dealers. So he's a man who knows he just needs a little bit to get by, and then he can just stop at that point. He's not greedy in the way that Brom's got to make this $20,000 thing pay off, which I imagine $20,000 in 1876 is like
it's a lot of money.
$20 million. Yeah. And so outside of just the skill of not hanging around with plots that don't need to be hung around with, I think that the chaos angle, I think, is kind of important to this episode, which is that it seems to be saying that the universe is kind of unpredictable in that there are good and bad people, but good and bad actions can kind of come just by accident, the way that they work out. So, like, Al is the most obvious example of this, which is that Al does intend to kill the girl, right? But things go a certain way through the actions of other characters that he takes the sort of what the audience sees as like the better view and like the righteous option, which is to kill Persimmon Phil at the end to just snuff it out the other way as opposed to waiting for the girl to come around. And I think that there's a lot of that stuff going on for the other character stories, like Bullock's whole thing, negotiating with Swearengen. He's this uptight asshole the whole time, right? Like he's insisting on these sort of rules, and it's like it has to be this way, and there's a sort of order to things, and if you're going to try to fuck me over on the order, I'm not very happy with you. And then when he goes to the end and he's assigned this role to keep an eye on Wild Bill so that Bill can take care of one guy and he takes care of the other. Bullock lies, right? Bullock goes against his entire ethos to that point where he says that he was going for his gun when it seems pretty clear to me that the other Tom Mason was not going for his gun, and Bill shot him somewhat unjustifiably in this world. And so it's this weird thing of like the best intentions to help your friend are sometimes aided by bad acts, where good acts sometimes come of bad intentions, but they turn out all right. So it's neat. It's kind of like, it's just kind of like this primordial ooze of the town is coming together when they don't have any law, they don't have any contracts, they don't have any sort of sense of order outside of what the people are throwing in together and how they interact with each other. And I think it all works out. I think it all, the storylines just play off each other nicely and they all thematically match.
Yeah. I was surprised that he went to see the girl himself if he was so concerned about her being able to finger people and
Yeah,
talking and stuff.
Yeah, she can't ID
she's-
him, I guess, is the she knows he can't be fingered as one of the accomplices. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking though, it's like he exposed himself way more than I think the guy Persimmon Phil did, because like even I think Persimmon Phil, his problem is that he didn't go for it and be like, no, absolutely, she could not identify me, because it was dark.
Yeah,
it was in the middle of nowhere. They probably, maybe not because they're dumb, but they probably had masks on or something.
Yeah. I
would have said, nope, there's no way she can identify me. Hey, I have to go real quick. I'll be right back. And then I would have never come back.
Yeah, because, I mean, they're basically just going on, I guess, if she can identify that it was not Sue, then it had to be these guys who were out there. But it is kind of a stretch to be able to identify him particularly. Although I think he has a line later on that he said he can't say to a moral certainty whether or not she can identify him.
Yeah.
But we also learned that, I don't know, it made me feel kind of bad for the Ned Mason in the first episode who got shot. He wasn't even there for the killing and stealing. He got scared and ran away before that happened, according to Persimmon Phil. So, which
does, again, kind of bring up the question from the last episode: why does he start talking? So, like, he could have just said nothing.
Yeah,
but I think it's he got a little scaredy pants.
He got bullocked. Yeah, he got bullocked in the eyes. So two character actor questions I had for you. So, Milch was concerned that Ian McShane is too small to play Swearengen. He pictured him as a big, hulking physical presence. Does it bother you?
No, not at all. No, I wouldn't even have noticed that unless you had pointed it out.
And the other one is, I sort of agree. I think that the performance is fine. They don't have him do anything crazy. Like, he just kind of sneaks a knife on someone. And it obviously for the character, it's all attitude rather than how he looks.
Right, yeah.
The other one that I always noticed Bullock's walk, right? And I thought that
because he walks like a N64 character.
He's got very wireframe knees as he's like sliding
he's got
around.
like a Team America marionette.
I always thought that was a choice that Oliphant was making because it sort of represents a very like stick up his ass character. He walks like he's got to stick up his ass, basically.
Right.
And so I always thought that was just him physically manifesting it. But reading like the Deadwood Bible about the backstory, apparently it was like a huge problem for a lot of producers the way that he walks, and they didn't like it. And
that's just how that's how Timothy Oliphant walks.
Yeah, that's all the other people saying that's just how Tim walks, and some people were like, I kind of like it, but other people were just like, this is not a correct walk for this character. I just don't think that it works. Apparently, they'll fix it in a couple episodes with the lens choice that they use to shoot it, and it kind of reconciles it at that point. But he was on the cutting block for a long time, and apparently the main reason was that they couldn't shoot him from a distance because they just didn't like the way it looked.
Wow.
Does it bother you at all? I notice it, but I wouldn't say it bothers me.
Yeah, I definitely noticed it, but I didn't think it was like really distracting or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just.
But yeah, I registered it the same way you did, where I was like, oh, okay, this must be some sort of a choice.
Yep. No, just how the man walks when he's the hitman.
That's unfortunate.
Agent 47 or something like that walks exactly the same way. Outside that, we look at some backstory on Calamity Jane. She has her sequence where she fails to protect the girl from Swearengen when he comes in to check on her and see what's going on. I like that scene.
That was amazing.
Yeah, they're good together.
What do you want?
Doc asked me to see your patient.
What for? What do you know better? Who the fuck are you? Don't you fucking ignore me!
You don't want to interfere with me.
You think I'm scared of you?
Sure you are. If I take a knife to you, you'll be scared worse than a long time dying.
I ain't scared to die. I ain't scared of nobody. Get away from her. Leave that little one alone. Leave her alone.
Hello.
Leave her alone, cocksucker.
I do it to you?
If I take my knife to you, you'll be scared worse than a long time dying, is a good Swearengen quote. You learn that she's been sexually abused when she was younger. It does the clever thing of tying in their constant use of the word fuck with her literally using it correctly in that scene, and implying that, not just implying, but that she got fucked.
Okay, I didn't take that literally. I thought she was talking metaphorically, but I guess.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because that scene is, she does not understand so it's hard to parse because as an audience member, it's different for you. So like, she does not know why Swearengen has come in to see the girl at all, right?
Oh,
and she assumes he's there to rape her.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And
now.
that's why she says, do it to me instead of her. But Swearengen is using the audience's perspective, which is that he's there to kill. And he says, why would I kill you at that point?
Yeah.
Not understanding what she's talking about. And then she says to the doc that she's been fucked by harder men than him and younger than when the girl was and stuff like that. So you get a sense of where Jane is coming from, and her performative maleness makes more sense at that point, just as a kind of like false bravado, and I guess you could read it as like a psychological thing to like make her unappealing to rape in some way, to make her more masculine and less feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she's that scene was really, really good. I mean, she's just such an interesting character because it's, it makes me wonder, is she just all bluster full stop, or is her reaction due solely to some sort of triggering of this past trauma that she had?
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, like it's so like there's so many aspects of it that are so interesting, because that scene's really good, and then the scene where she goes, I gotta go kill somebody.
Yeah.
And she's overcompensating because of how easily she crumbled, and she's got this big facade that she holds up. And then my favorite part, which is when after Charlie stops her, she's like, she did basically what I would do. I basically did this one time when I was younger, because there was a fight about starting to break it. When I'm talking like 12.
Yeah.
It was like a fight starting to break out or something outside of my house with the guy across the street and some younger kids. And so my dad went out there to kind of like break it up, and I was like fucking terrified. I was like, I don't know
the world
what's
is
going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if someone's getting, like my dad went out with a hockey stick and shit, and he never did that stuff.
Yeah.
And so when he came back in, I was like, okay, cool. It's all set. All right. What if I just like, you know what? I'm going to hang out by the window. I'll just watch. Like, there was nobody. Everyone was gone. Like, nothing was going to happen. And
you triangulated them. You triangulated.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, if something else happens, I'll see it. And then I can tell somebody else about it. And like, that's such a great moment when she's like, okay, well, I'm going to stay here in the middle, and then I can see if something's going to happen. Like, she doesn't go over the line. She doesn't actually do the thing that's scary.
Yeah.
But she convinces herself that she's doing something noble and doing something important, even though she's just wasting her time, basically. Although technically not, because she does save the girl's life. So.
She does, although she lets Doherty just walk past her. She doesn't recognize what's going on at that point.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why would she? I don't think she's met that guy at that point, right?
No, not face. No, she might have seen him at the gym, but she wouldn't know who he is or anything like that. Yeah,
this is the first time I noticed Dan wears a tie.
Yes, he has
a really weird looking tie, and Charlie does too. I think Charlie's got one on too, but they're like really grimy, fat, ugly ties.
Charlie Utter is a favorite of mine. He's a good friend. He's a good bro to Jane, where he sits with her when she's triangulating.
Yeah,
he stands with her and things like that. He also the scene where he's pissing on the wall and then shits in his
that's something else. That scene, yeah.
Evening. Bill and me didn't make it to your tent today. Tomorrow's another day.
Prospect has expressed purpose coming to this camp.
make a steak for his new wife. His idea. Don't suggest buying a shovel or a sifting cradle. Yeah.
Anyways, have a good evening.
I think that's such a Deadwood. It has that moment. He's like pissing and he shits himself basically, and then he has this just like nice little profound talk with Bullock about like, Bullock, what's your secret? Like, Bill can't do the things that you do, and you know, it's the cleverness of writing, because the character doesn't seem at that point to recognize, Charlie Utter doesn't seem to recognize the like incredibly obvious weaknesses that Bullock has, but he just sees the strengths that Bullock has that Wild Bill does not have, and he wishes that he could pass it along to him, and ends with a little prophetic, just don't wait too long to tell him about this. So
that scene also made me think about what that place must have smelled like.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, the reason that it's all muddy is because the horses are pissing all over the place. You know.
Yeah. It reminds me of years ago. My girlfriend and I went to Austin, and we did this really cool walking tour, like podcast-y thing or app thing, where it was like GPS led you through the town, telling you the story of this quote unquote America's first serial killer who was in Austin in like the 1800s. And there was this one part of it where you go down these stairs down to where this river is like running through, and the voice on the headphones on the app was like, "Take a big whiff. Do you smell that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it smells like fucking shit." And the voice is like, "That's what everything smelled like back in 1885. Nobody even noticed because everything smelled like that." I'm like, "Okay, great, awesome."
It's those Febreze commercials where someone's like sitting in a pile of dog shit and they're just like, it smells wonderful in here because they sprayed Febreze.
I don't know if this affects you as someone with kids, but as someone with a dog, I am constantly worried that my house actually smells like shit and I just can't tell.
Oh yeah, I mean, we call it for the kids we call it residue, where it's just like you imagine the smell, but there seems to be nothing there, and it's just like, oh, maybe he just has like, he might just be in a cloud of shit molecules or something like that, and it's just carrying up to my nose.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I have an animal who lives close quarters in my house with me, so I don't know if my house just smells like old dog.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing that I smell. So every now and then when people come over, I'm like, do people come over? I mean, people still come over, so I imagine it must not smell that bad.
No.
But it is one of those things where I think about like, does my house actually smell like fucking dog shit? Or
I've never noticed it. I've never noticed it.
Thanks.
I think your house smells just fine and dandy.
We have lots of candles.
Huge chunks of wax. I guess the last sort of plot theme or thematic stuff that's going on in this episode is a lot of the characters are addicted to different things. Some of them are addicted to traditional addictions like laudanum for Alma. Wild Bill is an alcoholic, obviously.
He's got a few things going on, I think.
Yeah, they share it most obviously in the breakfast scene where his hand is shaking too much and Charlie picks up the pot of coffee for him, and then Bill notices that Alma has the shakes as well when she picks up her coffee. Bullock,
I was just going to say I did like the scene where she comes down and everybody stands up and takes their hat off.
Yes, yeah. the one true quote unquote lady in the town, I think is Alma Garrett. The other addictions are like people are always looking for Al's approval, like Dan Doherty and Trixie are kind of for that kind of thing. You could argue that Doc is addicted to helping the people of the town and stuff like that. Bullock's addicted to rage, essentially, is his addiction. So
I would say the Doc on. He's got to be on something, isn't he? Is he got like a heroin addiction or something? He looks like he's fucked up all the time.
Yeah, I think he's just stressed out. I think he just drinks. I don't think he's on anything. I don't think we've seen an implication so far that he uses anything. Mm-hmm. The girls in the gym, the whores, are clearly using some sort of. I wonder if heroin was being used at this point, or was it just? There's a difference, right? Like you have to get heroin from opium, I think, but I think there's a difference. I'm not sure. Yeah, so it's just kind of the characters are all driven by something at this point that is causing them damage. It ties back to the deep water title. Their addictions tend to lead them into deeper and deeper waters, and some of them might not make it out in time to survive the end of the season. Anything else here? Did you have anything else you want to say about this? Those are my main observations about this episode. I like this one a lot. I think I like this one more than the pilot. It's interesting because I feel like they had a chance to actually settle into the character stuff once the sort of like pilot shenanigans of like setting everything up are out of the way. I feel like the show more quickly develops into what I'm familiar with it, which is that it's really just a lot of characters talking to each other in the way that they talk to each other in this episode.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Like this, the pilot's good, but this feels more like the show I remember. Not that the pilot doesn't, but this one just feels like everything's kind of like clicking a little bit and everything's moving and you're starting to see how these people are all really starting to interact and stuff. And it's good. It sets a lot of things forward. Like the thing that I really like about it is it has interesting plot lines that you're engaged in, even though you don't totally know what their purpose is in a larger sense.
Yeah.
Like the stuff with killing the child is interesting, independently of having any idea about why Al wants to kill her.
Right.
Like there's some implication that he's involved somehow, but we don't really know how. And I'm sure that's probably going to expand out even further. But it's still engaging even without that stuff, because I think that the stuff they're doing inside that is so good.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't have great scenes like the stuff with Calamity Jane, and I don't think it would be that interesting.
Yeah.
But the smaller elements are so interesting that the larger elements kind of you can let them hang a little bit looser.
Something that the pilot didn't do, I think, because it didn't have time, because it was more dedicated to setting stuff up, is that this episode is one that the characters who are having interactions have multiple scenes with each other through the episode. So there's like a little bit of a development to their conflict and the thing that they're talking about. The pilot didn't have time to do that. And I think that it benefits this show to do that because the show is so built around dialogue and language and the characters interacting with each other. I'm sort of amazed. I know I have the history of knowing the show pretty well, but it's like it's sort of incredible to me that the characters are all so well thought out immediately with each other. Like there's no sense of like trying to figure out what this character is or what that character is doing, or like we're just going to have this character hang around for a little while until we figure out what they're doing. They all know what they are. And there was some sort of screenwriting quote about it that's like someone had said that characters in written things are supposed to be like chemicals or reactions, which is basically like they have their own little beaker that they are as a character of like a certain kind of reaction. But when you combine them with another beaker, it causes a whole different thing to happen out of it. And I think that this show does that well.
Yeah. Again, it's what makes me so impressed with Calamity Jane, because looking at the characters they introduce in the first episode, I think you would be more than justified to expect Wild Bill to have like more of a role.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got that cool factor. He's the cool cowboy.
He's got the cool fact, but they are obviously clearly subverting that by making him kind of a loser.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think Calamity Jane very easily could have been just someone on the periphery who comes in and says cunt a bunch of times or something, and then that's kind of it for the episode. But they just lean into that stuff, and they kind of Bill has his purpose, but he's kind of periphery, and Jane actually gets the meat of gets some meat from the episode.
Yeah. 'Cause if Jane had not been developed, her character is unbearable, I think. You know, if she's just that loudmouth character who doesn't have a personality that informs why she is that way, it would just be like, what is this performance? Like, why is she acting this way? So I think it'll be one of the strengths of Milch, I think, is that all the writers in the Deadwood Bible and stuff that I was reading is just that he was. People would say that his greatest trait as a writer, or one of his stronger traits, is that he was not so egotistical to insist that the actors can't change the character that he had set up in his mind, and would frequently just inform the characters that he was writing with the traits of the actors, and like sort of adapt characters to better suit the actors that they had hired to play them, instead of insisting that they go one direction.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Comes through.
Good,
I mean,
good for him. Yeah,
Weigart is clearly has the range to do that with the Calamity Jane character. So,
Mr. Milch, this is Timothy Oliphant. I've decided I'd like to do.
I'm walking over right now.
I'd like to do an interesting accent for this Seth Bullock. We don't know where he's from. He's from Canada. We don't know what they sound like up there. So I've decided this is what the character will be moving forward.
Because a lot of the actors had tried out for different roles, I think, which is the thing too, but they ended up settling. It ties into that Milch thing of what he was doing. But like Trixie was supposed to be Alma Garrett at first. That's what they brought her in for.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Dan Doherty was supposed to be someone else. He was supposed to be someone who it wouldn't have made much sense at all if he had turned out to be that character. And obviously Powers Booth is supposed to be Swearengen and stuff like that. So people kind of, the chips fell where they lay.
I find that stuff so fascinating because I always wonder how much of that is like legitimate and how much of it is like, fuck it, let him read for other stuff. Like, when you say, Tom Hiddleston read for Thor, it's like they weren't going to cast that guy as Thor. He's way too Loki-ish to be Thor.
Well, there's a couple of examples in the book of the actors would come in and say like, I know I'm in here for part A, but I would really like to read part B, and they'd say like, okay, and so he'd read part B, and then the producers and Milch would look at him and go, that's great, but can you read the part that we brought you in here to do? So he technically read for part B, but he was never going to get part B. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, the one that I know of, only because it's a prerequisite of any show I'm on that I bring this up, is on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
Sarah Michelle Gellar read for the part of Cordelia, and Charisma Carpenter read for the part of Buffy.
Oh.
And they ended up switching those. So.
Yep. And millions of dollars go into the other bank account just at the flip of a switch like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a nice story when you're on the receiving end of like the bigger win, I guess, like when you look at it that way. Any other things about this one? I think we've pretty much covered everything there is. Bill and Jack continue to have great interactions where if the jackpot's irritating me, you're the fucking winner.
I'm out for a couple.
Go get you some more ammo, Wild Bill. That kind of looks bound to turn.
Your name's Jack.
Yeah, that's correct.
What are you in the game for, Jack?
What am I in it for?
If irritating me's the jackpot, you got the job done.
What are you in this for?
I can't remember. I must have watched this before I watched Parks and Rec, but even after Nick Offerman's like unrecognizable in this.
He is, yeah. Yep.
Even his voice, it is a little bit different enough that I don't know if I would have picked it up.
Yep. He's also filthy. The
yes,
whole
that's true. Yeah.
It's hard to identify.
He's heavier too.
He's much chubbier. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's subtly funny in this one too. He's like, one more shot, I'm going to get that cocksucker. Maybe a little bit more coffee too.
Yeah.
Any funny lines stick out for you in this one? I see as much misery out of them moving to justify themselves as them that set out to do harm. He's got a mean way of being happy. Here's my counteroffer to your counteroffer. Go fuck yourself.
Mm-hmm. That one not as good in real negotiations as you might think.
My favorite negotiation from Seth and Swearengen is when they break after their first meeting. Swearengen says, "Me and you are going to find our proper stride." Just we'll figure out how to deal with each other. Trixie has Mr. the best blowjob in Bath is only 12 steps away.
Is Seth unreasonably mean towards Swearengen at this point in their relationship?
Yes, he is.
Because I feel like Al has not really poked that bear.
Well, why do you think he is unnecessarily mean? If you do you think he's justified in being unnecessarily mean, or does he have a rationale?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if he does, because he's had half an interaction with the guy, and then when they go back to meet at night, when he comes over, Seth just stands up and he's like, "Saul will be my proxy," and then he leaves in a big huff. And if I'm kind of on Swearengen's team at that point, where it's like, I didn't do anything to this fucking guy. What's his problem?
Yeah. No,
I'm sure he can smell it on him that he's a
that's what I would think, is that he's a good enough cop to recognize what Swearengen is, and I think that irritates him.
Another thing I do like about that sequence is that Al's proposition and the terms that he sets are not unreasonable in general, but Seth's response to that he's like, "I'm not going into business with this guy," is also very perfectly reasonable. Given what we know about that guy, it is a very correct response.
Yeah, I was on the terms of the deal, I was actually a little bit confused. Is the deal $500 now and half the net, and then you square up to 1,000, or is it half the net and then you owe another 500 at the end of that period?
I think it was half the net until October, and then they were square. I'm not 100% sure.
So Al is only getting $1,000 at most out of this deal.
I think I could be wrong. Well, I mean, depends on what their net is, I guess.
Oh, sure, right. If they do better, it could go over 1,000. But otherwise, okay, I see.
I think so.
Yeah, I didn't. It's not. I mean, Al's whole thing is like, I got to get to know you. I don't know who the fuck you are. Like, how about we sort of figure things out, and you stop yelling at me and threatening me, and then we'll be able to see where we stand. And how many haircuts does a barber have to do to pay off $600 back then? That must have been
seriously.
That's a tremendous amount. Of hair.
I mean, that's also, there's no guarantee that he gave them that same deal, because that he gave the barber the same deal, because he's obviously trying to get something out of them as much as they are him.
Yeah. I knew you were an earner the minute you walked in here, you Jew bastard. Yeah, that's it. Oh, I guess the recurring motif, just before we go, the last thing is Reverend Smith's passages that he reads.
Yeah, I really like that guy. I think he's really good.
Yeah, he's again, the earnestness of him is upsetting to Seth. It's not like that.
I think it's upsetting to kind of everybody. I think it's
they have a hard time.
Earnestness. The earnestness is charming, but it also feels kind of psychotic.
Well, it ties into what he says. So his passage is, "Your ways are not our way, O Lord. We abide, the just and unjust alike, under your tearless eye. Tearless not because you do not see us, but because you see what we are so well."
Our Christ, as he was crucified, addressed the thief who was hanging by his side. "Verily I say unto thee, this day shalt thou be with me in paradise. Your ways are not our ways, O Lord. We abide the just and the unjust alike under your tearless eye. Tearless not because you do not see us, but because you see what we are so well."
And the Reverend's sort of eulogies and passage readings are going to largely tie into the themes of the episodes and the seasons as he does them. But he makes people uncomfortable because, much like God in that passage, he sees what everyone else is in his own way. And where the Reverend is earnest with himself and honest with himself about what he is, Bullock in particular is not honest with himself, and that's why it upsets him when he says that to him. So
yeah.
That's it. I guess we're done with Deep Water. 187 on an undercover cop. Anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap this one up, Clay?
I don't think so.
No,
check out the other shows that we do. Yep. That'd be nice. Rotten Horror Picture Show, Horror Movie Podcast, Badass Podcast, Batman the Animated Series Podcast. It's all out there. We spend too much time doing this, and we need people to listen to it.
That's right. It's out there. I don't know
because I need to justify it to my God, which is my mortgage payment.
Well, I see as much misery coming out of you moving to justify your podcast as those that record the podcast in the first place.
There you go. Set you up for one at the end there. Excellent.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Something Pretty we are on to episode 3 at this point, which I think is Reconnoitering the Rim, which is what I did to your mother last night, too. So we're going to be back with that one. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will see you next time.